This is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
Humans are a social species that are born to partner, hoping, wanting, and wishing that the union will be complementary to their personalities and last forever, taking a giant leap of faith and hoping that once is forever. The seas get stormy and the atmosphere changes, leaving you confused, lost, and heading in an unsure direction. Before long, you realize that concrete pillar we anchored ourselves to is slowly crumbling and turning to sand. And every steadfast principle we believed in has become cloudy and confusing. The harder you struggle to get out of the darkness, the deeper you'll fall unless a guide can show you the way. That one person to bring you down a path that they have traveled before and knows the map from memory, making sure that the nightmare does not persist and that the fairy tale is in another book. I'm Kevin Donaldson, always here with Mike Felice, and welcome to the Suffering Podcast. If you're a fan of overcoming adversity and overcoming suffering, then we're for you, because that's what we do here, and that's the stories that we highlight. So do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, please comment, ring the bell so you can get notified of all of our new content, and now you can join. Follow us on all social media so you can find out what we're up to when we're up to it. Tonight's a very special episode because we have somebody who traveled quite a distance and found out the best part about New Jersey, which is traffic, and that's Dr. Courtney Evans, to talk about the suffering of divorce recovery. This is something that this country needs. We need to learn how to heal and come back from this horrible thing that we never see coming. But thank you for coming in.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Before we get into it, because there's a lot to talk about here, let's throw a big shout out to our marquee sponsor. That's Toyota of Hackensack. We don't trust anybody as police, and we certainly don't trust anybody as podcasters, but we do trust the guys over at Toyota Hackensack. So if you're looking for a car, go to toyotahackensack.com and tell them the Suffering Podcast sent you. So, Doctor, may I call you Doctor?
Yes.
Doctor.
Sure.
Doctor. Each week we take a question from our audience. This week's question is from Flickaticka. What was something surprisingly that you recently learned about yourself?
That is a tough one. I try to learn new things about myself all the time, but one that hit me pretty hard is how much I suffer from imposter syndrome.
Oh, that's a tough one.
It is. It is. I know what it is. I did a capstone on it many years ago. I took the quiz and absolutely aced it. That's not a quiz you want to ace, but I aced it. But over the last few months, I've noticed that even as I've gotten older and accomplished things, it still hits me. And even just sitting here when you say doctor, I feel a little teeny tiny cringe. Like, am I worthy of that title? So I realize that I'm still suffering.
So if you're a doctor and I am clearly not a doctor, and you feel imposter syndrome for being a legitimate doctor, how do you think that makes me feel? Gee, thanks, doctor. Oh my gosh.
Oh, well, now I just feel worse. Thanks.
Now you don't only feel bad for yourself, you're making others feel bad around you. Hey,
now I make everybody feel bad. Now I'm just Debbie Downer.
This is a tough one, you know. I always thought myself to be this incredibly strong and resilient person. And what I've recently learned is I'm not as strong and resilient as I once thought I was. But also what I learned is that's the first step into becoming stronger. You know, if you're strong, you're never going to work at being strong.
Absolutely.
But if you're weak, that's something that's a detriment to your personality, and that's something that you're going to work at a little bit harder. I have my moments of doubt. I have my times of lowness. And before, when I had those times, I would just get stuck in it for periods of time. So something out of that darkness that I've learned about myself recently is I'm able to pull myself out. And the way I pull myself out is I talk about it. I share it with people instead of just burying it deep and just, we're going to stuff that down there. I'm never going to see that again. So, and that's come very, very recently. That's not something that's very new to me. I'm not afraid to show my vulnerability. I'm by no means a beta male where I'm going to, I'm not a weak person. I have the ability to be very physically strong. So I always say that, yes, I'll show you my heart. But if you're careless with my heart, I'll also punch you in the face. So there's that duality of man in there.
Absolutely.
So that's something that I've recently learned about myself, and I'm not afraid to admit it. There's times when I'm just not feeling myself. Like you, I do suffer from imposter syndrome as well. If you put a post up and it doesn't get as much likes as you want, you're like, oh, they don't love me no more.
Yeah, nobody likes me.
No.
What happened?
Nobody likes me. Come on. What did I do? I should just give it up. But those weaknesses that we have. And I've known this for a long time, but I've never put it into application when it comes to my resilience. Those weaknesses are good. The pain is good. I just talked about that on Instagram Live. The pain is what makes you grow because it's the most unbiased teacher around.
Absolutely.
That pain you're feeling for imposter syndrome is going to elevate you.
Absolutely. It's teaching me how to own myself, own what I'm worthy of. If I didn't feel pain, I would stay in the same spot. That's what makes us move. That's what makes us grow.
And with each new pain, you get to get a new tattoo.
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
the best part.
Can you write that down and sign that for me? I agree. Yes. With everyone, you should.
We just have to clear that with our spouses. That's the thing. Hey, listen, I went through this pain, What was your pain? I stubbed my toe. I stepped on a Lego.
Yeah.
And, well, that deserves a tattoo.
Okay, but a Lego, I mean, that is pretty painful.
That's the worst.
That's top 5 pain.
Yeah.
So it's totally worthy of a tattoo.
I've broken every finger in my body, and I'd rather do that than step on a Lego.
Absolutely. It's excruciating. So yes, that deserves a tattoo, but my spouse has plenty of tattoos, so he would absolutely co-sign on that.
Well, that's something you can do together.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Nothing says love like a good tattoo.
Agreed.
So Flick a Ticket, thank you so much for sending that one in. Keep sending in your questions, and we will try to get them on the air. So Dr. Courtney Evans, I have this weird thing about me, especially when it comes to social media. If somebody follows me on social media, I don't always follow them back.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, something catches my eye, and I don't know why it catches my eye. Your profile, and this is how this all went about. Something about your profile piqued my interest, and I started looking. I'm like, well, this person's pretty interesting, and I followed you back. And then I reached out to you. I said, I think you'd be a good fit for my show. Meanwhile, you're thinking, it's just some stranger danger reaching out to me. But I do have some experience in the realm of divorce, hanging around my friends, and there's a couple of them that went through some really messy ones, and I watch them recover from it. So I think the information that you have in your head is very valuable to the audience here.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate you coming in here, and we're just going to try to dig into your brain and figure it all out.
Yes, I love it. My brain can be a scary place, but I love it because this space needs disruption. The space of divorce. I mean, people who are listening, people everybody knows somebody who's been through divorce, and we need to talk about it. We need to open that door and be able to allow people to feel those feelings and talk about them and not put them to shame or guilt or fear or anger. So,
what's the statistic now? Do you have the statistic off the top of your head as far as I know in the police world it's higher than the national average, but somebody said between 45 and 65%, I think.
It's closer to 65 to 70%, but I mean, it depends on what you're reading and what you're looking at. There's a lot of cherry-picked data out there to make it not look like it's so bad in one direction or gender and kind of bad in another direction or gender, but I think it's closer to around 65 to 70%.
Wow. Jeez.
Yeah.
Now, everything in life is a gamble.
Absolutely.
Right? So if you're going to Atlantic City or if you're going to Vegas, would you ever lay down a bet where 65 to 75% of the odds are against you?
No, never.
And the reason I say that is before I was married, I used to rib people who were getting married. I'm like, you're betting on a losing horse here. What are you doing? I used to do that type of thing, and I didn't get invited to a lot of weddings.
We're not giving you the mic to do a toast.
Yeah, I'm definitely not the master of ceremonies at a wedding, but listen, I went and did it, and I understand it a little bit better now. But we're going to get into that stuff. So what I want you to do is I want you to tell our audience a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, what your childhood was like, and we'll start there.
I grew up very rurally in Virginia. My childhood was okay. It wasn't great. It wasn't terrible, but there was a lot of things that happened between my parents. I am a child of parents who stayed together for the kid, who never, by the way, asked the kid if she liked that idea. They stayed together and fought constantly. I was always in the middle of it. So my childhood kind of showed me what the picture of marriage was. You would think I might have been smart enough not to do it quite so young or quite so fast, but I wanted to get away from the tiny little stoplight town I lived in and away from my parents and away from the fighting. So I moved out at 18 and I met a guy and didn't go to college and stayed with him despite some red flags. And we ended up getting married.
Well, you look for that, if you grew up in an unstable household, I grew up in an
Yeah,
unstable household. I grew up very similar to you, where two people who should not have been together stayed together.
absolutely.
That gets imprinted on your mind, and you think,
It's
so
normal.
you become like an addict, right? An addict always thinks they're going to beat the system, right? And that's what people from broken households believe. They're like, oh, I'm going to beat the system. I'm never going to be like, well, it ends up happening.
Guess what?
Yeah.
Ask me how I know. It does end up that way, but it's actually your nervous system. Your nervous system gets used to the chaos, so it clings to chaos to make you feel safe. So when you start healing from stuff like that and it feels very uncomfortable, that's why. It's because your nervous system isn't comfortable anymore. It feeds off of chaos. So silence is actually terrifying to you. So when things feel good or you feel loved and safe and cared about, you look for ways to create chaos so that your nervous system comes back down because that's what it's used to.
You just described probably 80% of the police officers in the country. So the profile of a police officer, from what I know, born in chaos, lives in chaos, can't live without chaos, creates chaos, either comes from some type of abusive household, either physical, sexual, or emotional, and then gets involved in some sort of contact sports. And listen, it makes great cops. It really
Yeah.
does. But it makes very shitty husbands and wives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, anyone, whether it's a cop or because of what you came up in, first responders sometimes are the same way. If you're used to a certain environment, your body adapts to that environment. And then that's what it will seek out to make you feel safe. And when you're with other people, friends, significant others who did not grow up that way, who are not used to the chaos, they don't understand why you're constantly looking for it.
And you sort of look at them like, you're weird. Well,
Absolutely.
your parent. So my good friend Sherry Alsop, her husband Gary, she always says he was raised by Ward and June Cleaver.
Yes.
All right. And it's so foreign to us that you just can't, it's almost like you can't relate to him, or you look at him like a science experiment. You're like, really? Like, you went to bed and you weren't crying?
Right?
What is
Your
that?
parents didn't yell at each other? What do you mean? Oh yeah, I tell my husband very lovingly that he was raised that exact same way. I'm like, your parents are fantastic. They're so sweet. And I'll tell him, like I grew up with this magic manila folder that would show up. Anytime my parents would have a fight, it would come out. And it supposedly has divorce papers in it. I don't really know if it ever had papers in it, but it would come out. It would get slung around. One or the other would threaten divorce. There would be, bags on the front porch, packing, we're leaving. Yelling and screaming was the way you worked things out. So with my husband, I'm like, what do you mean they didn't threaten to divorce every other day? Like, that's not normal behavior? I don't understand.
See, that's one thing that I have changed, okay, and that was very purposely done. I'm a huge believer that whatever you put out into the universe has a likelihood of coming true.
Mhm.
So that word for me, I mean, it has to be bad for that to come out of my mouth.
Absolutely.
And I try to, even though you may feel, because nobody can piss you off like your partner.
Absolutely.
And I think it was Jordan Peterson who said, if your partner isn't the most annoying person in the world, are they even your partner? And I love that statement, because those people who have struggled through any type of relationship know exactly what he's talking about.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. What I've known about children who grow up in chaos like that, they present in certain ways, either it's behavioral, drugs, promiscuity, whatever it may be. Was there any of that with you?
Mine was people pleasing behaviors. And I always have to have a sense of accomplishment to feel like I'm worthy of things. So,
Really? I've seen
yeah.
kids like that. So I coach youth sports. I've seen a lot of kids like that, and I know usually the backstory why.
Yeah. Love for me was very conditional as a child. It was conditioned upon how clean your room was, how well you did your chores, how short your hair was, how skinny you were, what clothes you were wearing. It was always very conditional upon that. So it was like the higher achiever I am, the more people will love me.
Kind of like if you did well in sports.
Yes.
Yeah, it sounds familiar. That sounds familiar.
Yeah. So it's, it's so funny. You spoke to it at the beginning, the duality of things. So, I went from that position into a marriage that was that way. My first marriage was that way. It was very, very conditional. And then to come into one now that's not that way anymore and to have to decondition myself to not have to be that people pleaser. I can see kind of both sides.
Decondition yourself. Wow, I think that's something that everybody who's had some sort of failure, because at its core, divorce is a failure.
Yes.
You feel like a complete failure. You go into this thing with the best of intentions, and then when it doesn't work out, like, hindsight's 2020. So when it doesn't work out, you're like, no shit, it didn't work out because of A, B, and C, and D.
Absolutely.
But while you're in it, while you're stuck in it, you're trying to grab on with, and you're just on with your fingertips, and one wrong move and off
Everything
down you go. And you just hope you can hang on and weather the storm.
Yeah. And you try over and over again until one storm one day just knocks you out and you have no other choice.
So when you're 18, is that what you were looking for? Somebody to sort of take you away in a fairy tale sense?
Not a fairy tale sense. No, I do not believe in fairy tales. I was never, as a child, my mother would tell me, when I would look at Disney princesses and things like that, she would tell me that they were very superficial and you don't need friends in your life. You don't need dresses and nails. Those are all very superficial things. So to me, it was never about like the fairy tale princess. The princess of my story, the fairy tale of my story, the hero of my story was supposed to be me. So I wasn't looking for someone to ride in and save me, so to speak, but I was looking because I was conditioned to think you need to go marry somebody, you need to have a career, you need to marry someone who fits our mold, and I hope this doesn't offend anybody, but a hunting, fishing, country redneck driving a jacked up truck, that's what you need to go and marry. Like, this is the cookie cutter cutout of what your life is supposed to look like. So I was always conditioned to live a life full of shoulds. So me getting married and living that life was a should. It wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't, ride me away into the sunset. It
you
was
were
what
on a
I should
timeline.
do. Yes.
Yeah, you were on a timeline. I got to get married by this and
Yes.
by this. And to some extent, I felt that pressure growing up. Like when I was in my 20s, I started feeling that pressure. I don't know if that's common. Like I that's the way I felt. And it's something I've never addressed. I should be married by now, but I'm not. So maybe there's something wrong. Maybe I should start looking for that. Maybe I buckle down and start doing that stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, when I started dating my first husband, we were 18 and we did not get married for 7 years. And in those 7 years, it almost became like a battle inside of myself to he has to ask me to marry him. I have to marry him. I know there's red flags. I know we're not made for each other, but I have to do this because if I don't, then I'm a failure.
So, boy, that's a lot of pressure to put on somebody, but I guarantee you're talking to your friends and your friends are probably telling you, what is he doing? How come he's not asking you to marry him? All that stuff, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, at our wedding, after they, announce you as bride and groom, I mean, there were people who sighed and they were like, finally. It's like, okay, so that was just another layer of unworthiness. Like, it took me so long. What's wrong with me that he wasn't ready to marry me before that? So I ignored a lot of things because I had something to prove.
And you're 25, right? You're 25 when you got married. You still have a lot of growing up to do at 25.
Absolutely.
I thought I was the smartest person in the world when I was 25.
We were. We totally were.
Yeah, sure. But at 50, I realized how stupid I was.
At all the things we didn't know, all the things that people tried to tell us that we didn't listen to. Oh, yeah. I mean, like you said, hindsight's 20/20.
Yeah. And so I got a friend of mine that whenever something bad happens, right? He'll say, I told you. I'm like, no, you didn't. You're predicting the past. You're like Nostradamus's bastard brother, Astradamus. There's a lot of people out there that predict the past. So what were some of the red flags that you saw with your first husband? Are you ready to enhance your skills and provide the best care to those who need it the most? I'm Kevin Donaldson.
I'm Sherry Alsop. Our trauma-informed training is here to help, and we've been traveling across the country delivering this essential need to departments and organizations of every size, shape, and makeup.
We come to you with on-site training so you don't have to worry about travel or scheduling conflicts.
This isn't just a class, it's an interactive experience. You'll learn directly from subject matter experts who teach from a victim's point of view, putting you in the shoes of those who have experienced trauma.
This approach allows you to understand trauma on a deeper level and to better serve the individuals you work with.
We'll guide you through new interview techniques that prioritize a victim-centered approach, ensuring safety and empathy in every conversation.
And for those of you in law enforcement or other fields, our training includes post-credits, giving you the extra added value and recognition for your commitment to professional growth.
We offer references upon request to show just how effective our training can be.
Don't miss the opportunity to improve your understanding of trauma and make a real difference in the lives of those you serve. Get in touch with us today by going to sherryalsop.com and let us bring trauma-informed training to your organization.
Together, we can make a lasting impact.
And by the way, I don't want to offend this man that's sitting in the control room who is your husband right now, okay, by bringing up the pain of the past. So please forgive me.
Oh, he's not mad. He's read my book. So he knows all of this in and out better than anybody does. So
what were some of the red flags?
I was never a priority. He had his own life and own priorities. He told me really early on what his priorities were, and I was not on the list of things that he listed to me.
Priorities such as what?
Hunting, fishing, friends, things like that.
Sounds like a good guy. No,
Yeah.
I'm not a hunter or a fisher. So.
Well, and when we were 18, it was just like, okay, we're teenagers. We're gonna grow up. We're gonna get married. We're gonna have a house. This will get better. I can change him. Yep. Those famous last words. I can change him.
Yeah, I don't think that's ever happened in the history of couples.
No, it has not. You should not go into a relationship wanting or thinking that you can change the other person. You have to be secure in who you are and let them be secure in who they are. And the reality of it is I was not secure in who I was. So I would be remiss if I sat here and said everything was totally his fault. A part of me, there are a lot of things that were his fault. But there were also some things that were mine that I have to own too, which is I was young and I was not secure in myself enough to enter a relationship and a marriage with someone at that point in my life.
There are hard stops, and then there are things that, you can't, just rail on every little detail.
No.
That we all have our faults. You can't, listen, if he leaves his underwear in the bathroom after the shower, well, okay, is it enough to get divorced? Like, there's the fine line. There's certain little pet peeves, and I am very guilty of this with my wife. I'm very OCD because of the way I grew up. So because I'm very OCD, I like the lights turned off. I've turned into an adult, and it sucks.
Walking through the house, why is every light in this house on?
Yeah, it's like, what are we doing? And I've actually said that. What are we doing? Just supporting the power company here? What's going on? And they're all LED lights. It costs like, here's a nickel.
There's like nothing.
But there's those little pet peeves, and they'll go and they'll just dig into me, and I can't, for some reason, I can't forget them. And I know they're bullshit. Me and my wife have problems just like everybody else.
Yeah.
My theory is, and I'm actually going to ask your professional opinion on this. If you're working on problems inside the marriage, my belief was always try to work on small problems first so you can get the little victories.
Yes.
Okay. Never. It's not like when you choose to go out and be a runner, you don't start running a marathon. You start with a 5K. You start with one step. You start with a mile.
Yeah.
And that's my thinking. And it's not that. And when I don't see those little things getting done because my wife doesn't see them as important, where I think that they're important.
Right.
I don't think it's the right thing for me to get so agitated about, but there's something in me that's just like, damn.
Yeah. We all have those things. And you need to dig into the why. Why do the lights bother you? Why, because each person has their own set of lenses, not just one lens, but lenses that they look through. So multiple pairs of glasses that they wear, and it's based on their lived experiences, their childhoods, if they've been married before, their careers. It's all different lenses. So what's important to you is not important to her. What's important to her is not important to me. So everybody has their own things. But when you have a nuance like that, you need to dig into why, because there's a reason.
See, when she brings up those little things with me, I'm like, well, this doesn't really mean anything to me, so I'm just going to do it. Like, she wants the toilet seat down. And I always told her she's outnumbered in the house. There's 3 boys and 2 girls, and one of those girls is a dog. She goes to the bathroom outside, so she doesn't need the toilet seat.
She's massively outnumbered.
So she's very outnumbered. But, there are some hard stops. Like, if she puts the roll of toilet paper on the ring wrong.
Okay, what's wrong? Because I know he is in there laughing right now. What is wrong?
Okay, if you go back to the original patent for toilet paper, back to 1890s, over.
Oh my God.
Over.
He is in there going, right, Right. I can hear it now.
It's not my rule. It's the patent. Like, it's the U.S. patent on toilet paper. It goes over. And those of you out there, I want you to look that up. You'll see it. It's over and out, not
we
under.
We have a sign in our bathroom that has mullet or beard. Which one is right? And to me, I don't care which one is right. It's just like, okay, you didn't put the toilet paper back on the roll. If I have to put it back on there at 4 o'clock in the morning when it's dark, I don't give a crap how it's back on there. It's not that I'm purposefully doing it, but he's like, this is wrong. You cannot do this. I'm like, why are we fighting over toilet paper?
I found there was only one excuse to do it under. There's only one. Is if you have a cat.
Okay, I'm allergic to cats, so
Cats
I can't
will
use that.
Cats will run the toilet paper.
Yes.
And they can't run it if it's under.
Okay, but to be fair, our dog eats toilet paper.
So does mine.
So maybe if it's under, he won't get to it. So
They
there's
wipe
my
from the
excuse.
inside out. It's okay.
Yeah.
Like, they know what they're doing. They wipe from the inside out.
Yeah.
Yeah, my dog does too. She loves it.
But toilet paper is important to him. It's not important to me. And lights are important to you.
Correct.
So, in some things, like toilet paper, no offense intended to those of you who agree that's right or wrong, toilet paper is an easy thing. Sometimes I do it wrong just to aggravate him, just because it's fun.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
sometimes you have to turn it into things like that. But if it's something that's causing you like legitimate anger, then you gotta dig into why, and there's no why behind toilet paper. I don't care what you people say.
And of course, I'm making a joke about it, but those are the little things. And I think by saying the toilet, like, if you say the toilet paper, because we all use it, if you say toilet paper, everybody will have a different opinion, and that will start more arguments. But you'll actually hear me from the bathroom going, Jesus, what are you doing? You know, it'll get that bad. But there are some legitimate hard stops in a relationship.
Absolutely.
What would you consider them to be?
For me, any kind of abuse. And people think that abuse is only bruises. It's not. It can be mental, it can be emotional, it can be financial. Any kind of abuse, any kind of
Financial abuse is actually becoming more and more prevalent.
very much so.
And it's underreported, and there's no advocacy groups for financial abuse.
No, very much so. There are still people out there who try to keep their spouse off of checking accounts, out of, any kind of money management, so that they feel trapped. Because especially in today's world, when everything is as expensive as it is, people don't feel like they can leave even when they know what kind of money situation they're in. Well, if their spouse keeps them in the dark about the money, then they have no idea if they can make it, not make it. How are they going to access funds? Are they going to be frozen from them? So it's a level of control.
So one of the things that I've actually, I'm very proud of myself that I've done with my wife, although I am a big proponent of not letting your wife have an Amazon account. Okay. Amazon is at my house more than I am.
Have you ever had anybody walk out of the podcast? Because I cannot get on board with this.
So if you were to tell me that my wife and the Amazon guy were having an affair, I'd be like, it kind of makes sense. He's there, yeah. But in all seriousness, even though I take care of all the finances in my house, because that's my job. We divide and conquer stuff when it comes to that. And she doesn't know a whole lot about the finances, but I don't keep her in the dark purposely. But I have set her up that if things were ever to go awry between us, or I was ever to pass away, that she would be okay.
Absolutely. That's not control.
No, I'm not trying to control. I'm just better at it. Like, she's better at stuff than I am, and I'm better at stuff. Like, that's one of the things that I'm better at.
Absolutely. We do the same thing. And when my husband took it over, now, like, he's paying off credit cards and paying down debt. And I'm like, how are you doing this? We are making the same amount of money.
Because men can do magic.
I know he can.
Yeah.
Every time I look at the bank account, I'm like, oh my gosh. But money is a trigger for me. It's a big, big trigger for me. It dates back to my parents. My dad was the breadwinner. He made that very, very obvious. My mother always felt like she couldn't go anywhere because of that. And it was always something that was thrown around a lot. And then in my first marriage, it was kind of the same. We kept everything completely separate. I wrote a rent check for the house that I helped build because we didn't have any accounts put together. And if I ever said anything about it, I was made to feel very small and like I don't know what I'm doing. So when we talk about money, it's very triggery for me. It will cause that nervous system response to kick in. And my husband was like, let me just go ahead and, let's sit down and let's do this together. And I'll take over this part, but you have access to everything. I want you to be a part of it. And it was like he helped decondition that part for me.
This happens in many different households where, like, the way my financial situation is set up is everything is joint, but she has her own account that she draws from, and I have my own account. But the problem is, and this happens a lot because I hear it out of a lot of spouses, and I'm gonna point a finger at women, and I'm sure it happens to men too. But it's my money, It's my wife works and
Yeah.
she earns money, but don't worry about it. I paid for my money. I'm like, well, what's in my checking account?
Yeah.
That's our money.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the other way that becomes. But I think part of the reason that I can control's a bad word. It makes me sound very bad. I control the finances is because in my household growing up, it was the other way around, and my mother always hid money.
Yeah.
She hid
Yeah.
money, or hid debt, or whatever it was. So and I'm always we're conditioned at that young of an
Absolutely.
age.
And I don't think that we should ever judge what anyone else does in their household, because if it works for their household, then it works. When the problem comes in is when it's not working for someone's household and one person is at a disadvantage over the other one. Because when you get married, you're supposed to be a partner. And if you feel like you're at a disadvantage to the other one because of control or abuse or anything like that, that's where we start going awry. But I can't sit here and say, well, you're in charge of the finances, so you're a jerk. You're trying to control her. It's what works because of the way you were conditioned. She understands that. She's fine with it. She knows she's set if anything goes awry. That works for you guys.
Well, she just texted me the other day because we got some friends going through some issues, and she just texted me this thing. Am I on the deed to the house? I go, nope, all mine. No, of course she's on the deed to the house.
Yeah.
But so you just brought up a very important point, and that is partner.
Yes.
Okay. When you get married, you are supposed to be a partner with one another. But I would love to hear what your opinion is on the percentage of people who are married in the United States that would be considered legitimate partners.
Oh,
I'd say that
that's a low number.
Yeah, me personally, I would consider that to be because I'm a student of people around me. It's so small.
It's very small. And I think, I don't know, I have my opinions, obviously, on what I think is causing it, but I think the more we get into social media, the way that, just kind of the world is going, I think that number is going to get smaller and smaller.
There's one couple, and I have to throw a big shout out to him. He was in here. His name's Anthony Autry. He's recent, but they're newlyweds, so it doesn't really count. They go. I watch it. I watch his social media, and they go everywhere. They travel together. They, she was here, and I always thought that was just a really nice partnership. He brought her into his world.
Yeah.
And have you ever tried to do that with your husband, your current husband, or your ex-husband?
What part?
Just bring him into your world, your hobbies. Like your husband, you said your ex-husband was a hunter and fisher. Did he ever try to bring you out fishing or hunting?
No.
Okay.
No. That was his time to do the things that he wanted to do. So no. I don't like saying current husband like I'm going to have another one in the future.
Husband right now.
Yeah, husband right now. He includes me in as much as he possibly can. Now, that is with the caveat. He is a very big skateboarder, soccer person. He's very athletic. He's amazing at it. I have no grace whatsoever. So I really can only cheer from the sidelines, but he does bring me into those things, invites me to things, talks to me about them. And I very much bring him into my world. I actually just hired him as my CIO for my business. So
nice,
yeah.
Nice.
So
sure. Put him in charge of something else. So
Yeah, absolutely. I can't work a computer to save my life, and that's his background. So I was like, hey, this works. Go do this because I asked you to do it anyway. But yes, I don't think that you should invite a partner to take over your hobbies. I think there are things you should have that are separate from each other. It's so funny. My son said to me just yesterday, we were riding in the car, and he said, Mom, he said, I think it's weird if you get married to somebody and stay married to him for your whole life. And I was like, why? And now, mind you, he's 12. Like, why?
So
would
is
you?
the 12-year-old from your previous husband?
Yes.
Okay.
So I was like, why? And he said, I don't know. Spending that much time with someone would be so annoying. And I had to laugh. And I was like, okay, that's fair. That's fair. So we had a long conversation about how you need to have, your separate things your separate friends, things that you go and do on your own, and then things that you include each other in. So there's a fine balance there. And I think that a lot of people get caught up in, oh, she's trying to control me because she's trying to do everything I do, or he doesn't trust me because he wants to be in everything I want to do.
Yeah, I can see that. But one of the things, because I've been traveling a lot recently, I was always afraid of traveling because prior to being a cop, I used to travel a lot for business.
Yeah.
And it was very lonely, and but here was the thing now, and I was afraid to fall back into that when I started traveling these past couple of years. What it's done is it's made me miss things that I may have taken for granted, and So I actually enjoy traveling because I know the minute I get in my hotel, wherever I am, I miss my family.
Yes.
I miss my wife. I
Yes.
miss laying in my own bed and next to her. And so I understand that. But back to your ex-husband. So the red flag number one was, he had his own list of priorities and you weren't on it. What were some other ones?
I was never quite good enough with most of the things that I did. Kind of back to childhood, it was my hair was never the right way. My weight was never the right way. It was always some sort of a problem. And then, I always hesitate to say this because there's such a backstory that goes with it. And just throwing it out there, if you want the backstory, read my book because it's all in there. But
It's like Dianetics. Read the book.
yeah, read the book. I don't have time on this podcast to explain all of it, but it got to the point where everything was I have to work, and there was no time or space made for family, for connection, for things like that. And that started to be very clear to me that I was not a priority. And then when I brought a child into the situation, it was, is this not going to be a priority? And then I started to find my voice. So about halfway through our marriage, I had gotten a couple of degrees. I was a registered nurse. I had a network of friends that I had met in school. He was always trying to keep me away from them. And I didn't really know why at the time. It always seemed like, oh, well, this one's a know-it-all, and I don't like this one, and I don't like this one's husband. And there was always a reason. Then I started to realize that it was an isolation tactic because the more people I hung out with,
Isn't that the key to narcissistic behavior?
Yes. It was very much because I would start to see, like, wait a minute, this is not normal. This is not a normal part of marriage. This is not how you do things. You don't write a rent check to your husband. These are not things that you do. So I started to find myself and I started to find my voice. And quite frankly, this is going to sound terrible. Again, read the book for context. But the more degrees I got, the worse we got, the worse we fought, the more toxic things became.
In your mind, as you were getting these degrees, did you think that was going to elevate some level of acceptance with him?
Yes. He had big dreams. And
it's very, very interesting.
Yeah. And I thought, well, if I get these degrees and I make more money and I can make some of these dreams come true,
we'll be happy.
Yeah, we'll be happy then. He'll see me then. He'll love me then. I'll be a priority then. But all it was really doing was I was growing one way and he was not. And so it started getting very toxic and it started looking a lot like my parents' marriage. A lot of mean things being said. And it just started to become more and more clear that I was not going to be important no matter what I had, what degrees I had. I was never going to fit in this. And I always make this hand gesture and I say it to my husband, my now husband. I always say it to him, but I was never going to fit
Your husband, there's your husband and your ex-husband.
Yes,
we'll do that.
That works. So I say it to my husband all the time. I was never going to fit in my ex-husband's 2x2 box. It was this box that I was just supposed to be this perfect country wife that was supposed to live this way and only say these things. And as I started to grow up and grow into my own and get more educated and meet new people, I was outgrowing that box.
I think the key dynamic to that is when, before you start finding your voice, as you say, you doubt, right? Your partner will say something and it'll make you doubt.
Oh, yeah.
And then, but as you find your voice, you doubt less. And when you find one thing is total bullshit, you're like, oh, well.
Now it all is.
Now it all is, yeah.
Yes.
So when you poke the hole in that one little thin bubble.
Yes.
Now, what was the hard stop? What was the proverbial last straw?
There were a couple, honestly, that should have been the very last straw, but I gave a couple of extra chances there at the end. The final one was when my son told my mother, and yes, I hear the irony in what I'm getting ready to say. My son told my mother that he heard us fighting the night before and that I was going to call the police. And when my mother judged me for that statement, I realized in that moment, there is no way in hell I'm staying in this. No way.
Hello, kettle. I'm black.
Exactly. And it flew right over her head. She was just like, how could you let this happen? And it was like, what? Wait, what? How? Oh, okay. Nope. And I couldn't even come up with words to verbalize the hilarity in her acting like she had no idea where that even came from. But in that moment, I realized, okay, you two never protected me. You let me grow up thinking that this is normal. I will not do that to my child. I will not. He will not grow up thinking that this is the way you speak to women. And he will not grow up thinking that this is the way a marriage is supposed to look. It's not going to happen.
Then you just harbor resentment towards your partner.
Absolutely.
Now, what if, I'm going to say woulda, coulda, shouldas. What if, very close to the end, he started to make active progress and tried to change his bad behavior or behavior that you found unacceptable? Would that have made a difference?
He tried. He waited until I was moving out and tried. He was, I'll go to therapy. I'll do whatever it is that you need. But by that point, it was too far gone. I had begged for too many years. I had been silenced for too many years. There was no turning back at that point. The damage was done. I can't pinpoint to you the day that I fell out of love with him. I don't know. I don't know the exact day. I just know there was a day. And it was a series of events, and they weren't loud earthquake events. They weren't stabbing wounds. They weren't life-shattering. It was just small little moments over a series of time that eventually led to that.
I think that's more painful than those other, we all know the common ones. Hey, abuse. Hey, he smacked me in the face. He punched me.
Yes.
Or she punched him. You know, that happens more often than people report because men don't want to say anything.
It does.
Or you catch him with another person. Mm-hmm. You know, those things, they're events, right? Mm-hmm. They're things that...
They're a tangible event that you can fall back on.
Right. So you're like... It's like almost dying of cancer, you know, you just sort of waste away.
Yeah.
And it's sad to watch, or watching somebody, if you ever had anybody in your family have dementia and watch them totally waste away, it's like watching them die every single day.
Yeah.
You know, that's a tough thing. So in a lot of ways, while yours wasn't an event, I find your stuff a little bit more horrifying because you watched in real time as this thing just went away.
I did. And like I said, I can't pinpoint a specific day that I fell out of love. I can pinpoint the day that I said enough is enough, which is obviously, you know, my son. But it was a slow burn. And the hardest part was for someone like me, who is a people pleaser, who's always an over-explainer, who needs everybody to understand what I'm doing. I couldn't pinpoint just one. So it was like, well, it's not that bad. And everyone was shocked when I left. Well, we thought you guys were happy. And it's like, because if I tell you one event, you're going to be like, you're leaving because of that?
Yeah.
But you don't have time or the energy to sit down and let me tell you the 100 small events that led up to this one.
Now, there's the inevitable fallout when you finally call it quits, pull the plug. You lose friends. There's financial problems. You have a child. There's custody issues. Was there a feeling of despair? Was there a feeling of, oh my God, what am I going to do? Or was it, I'm ready.
It went back and forth. There was a lot of sadness. 'Cause like you said a little bit ago, I mean, divorce is failure. It is. Whether it's consequences of your own actions or consequences of someone else's actions or a combination of both, it's still a failure. No one, well, I won't say no one, most people don't go into a marriage with the end in mind. You go into it with the best laid plans. So when it fails,
unless you're a celebrity, they seem to get divorced like they're changing socks.
Yeah, I feel like it's because if it's a tax write-off or something. But for us other people, we don't do that. And I didn't go into my marriage with the end in mind. I wanted to grow old with this person. I wanted to be enough for this person. I wanted to live out my time having 100% of the time with my son. But so those parts, it was easy to walk away, easy, quote unquote, to walk away because I knew I was never going to have that. But then you have those waves that hit you where you're like, now I'm a single mom. What am I going to do? I've lost friends, people. And when you live in a small town, there's so many rumors. If I had been doing half the stuff that people said I was doing, I'd have been living the life.
Yeah.
I'd have been having all kinds of fun. But, you live all these rumors everywhere you go. You've got this person who thinks this or this person who thinks that. You wonder what your child's going to hear. You wonder where the money's going to come from. Where are you going to move? Where are you going to live? But I have to say that in it was very difficult. But looking back on it, there were so many things that just synchronicities that lined up for me. That was just one stone appeared right after the other. Even when I didn't think it was going to and I couldn't see the next one, there was always a stone that just appeared. And I was able to just move forward and move out and get back on my feet and do all of these things.
So the great thing about somebody in your situation is while you have a spouse, you always sort of have a plan B. You lean on your spouse at certain times. They lean on you at certain times, and that's what a true partnership should be.
Yeah.
But even if it's a false reality inside your head. But when you're out on your own, there is no plan B. It's pass or fail.
Yes.
There is nothing in between.
No.
And I was there a certain time in my life where it's like I had nobody to depend on. I didn't have parents that were going to give. It's either I succeed on my own, and that's when I did my best stuff as
Yes.
far as work.
Yeah.
I was financially responsible. I went, I never missed work, and I was the best because I was uncomfortable, and I knew the minute that I tripped, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done. So in a lot of ways, that divorce is a huge turning point in your life where you start really finding your voice then.
Oh, absolutely. We can't be empowered to who we're supposed to be until everything around us is burnt to the ground. And when you get a divorce, everything around you is burnt to the ground. So, and to me, I had someone watching me, watching my every move, seeing what was going to happen that I needed to make feel safe and secure. So I had no other choice than to just get it right the first time. And did I always do that? No, I didn't. Was it easy? No, it was not. I had to move out. I had to move into this tiny little apartment that, thank God, it was furnished because it was made for people who did shift work from out of town. I just fell into it because my best friend, who also got a divorce, was living there, and the place next to her opened up, and it was fully furnished with everything in there. Not furniture I would have picked, but it had furniture in it. And I was like, was that the perfect scenario? No. But was it what I needed to launch into the next stone, to the next stage of my life, to continue to find my voice for my child? Yes, it was.
And was it a messy divorce?
Yes and no. I mean, every divorce is, but we used the same attorney, and we've had 50-50 custody since day one.
Okay.
I made it very clear from day one, no matter what kind of husband or ex-husband or man I thought he was.
Still the father of your child.
Yes, and I'm not. My son will make his own decisions. I will not be the one that took him or alienated him away from anyone in his family. And I made that decision early on. There have been times I've regretted that because the co-parenting has not been great. We have hit brick walls time and time again. But the reality is he's the father of my child, and I can't change that. That was a decision I made. So my son can't suffer because of that.
Because I think you've come to the realization that your son did not ask to be born.
No.
You willingly brought him into this life. Therefore, there are certain sacrifices that you're going to have to make for the betterment of him.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, if I had it my way, I would never speak to my ex-husband again. Like, I would pretend he doesn't exist, but I have to because I have a child. So, we co-parent okay. I won't say that we're counter parents because we're not. We try to come together as best we can for my son, our son, but we struggle. I don't like some of the decisions he chooses and things like that. But I also have the flip side of the coin because I lived through a custody battle with my husband. So I know what messy looks like. I know what high conflict looks like. I know what parental alienation, false allegations, family court. I know what all that looks like.
Yeah, that gentleman sitting out in the room with your husband, Tom Flynn, he is the subject matter expert on parental alienation.
Yes. I told him on the way in, him and my husband could probably have a very long conversation.
Yep.
So I know what messy looks like. So for me to say that my divorce was messy, I would be lying if I said that, because in comparison, that two things can be true. I mean, it was difficult. It was hurtful. It was sad. I had to grieve, all the things that come with divorce, but it was definitely not all of the things that divorce can become.
There's no such thing as a good divorce because we all want our pound of flesh.
Absolutely.
And we always leave unsatisfied, unsatiated when it comes to that. But how long after you finally split did you start pulling yourself back up?
The problem with being able to pull myself back up was after going through my divorce and then, kind of landing on my feet as a single mom, I then met and started dating my husband, and then his custody battle started.
Ooh.
So I kind of launched from one into the other.
Did something in your mind saying, hey, whoa, I just left one and now I'm getting involved in something messy? Because unfortunately, The second spouses often pay the price for the other person's crimes.
Oh, 100%, 100. And that goes both ways.
Mhm.
So, like I've said, my husband deals with a great deal of insecurity from me. I look for chaos because that's where my nervous system feels comfortable. So, I mean, it goes both ways. But yes, I had some major hesitation in the beginning, as did he. He also knew that I had just gotten out of a marriage. So we had hesitation, but the turning point for me with him, that there was like, there's no way I can just turn my back at this point, is because of the type of man that he is. The safety that I feel with him is like I've never felt from anyone in my entire life. I have a voice with him. It's my voice, and he doesn't try to change it. He doesn't try to tell me who I can be, and he doesn't shove me in that 2x2 box. He never has. So when I met him and started learning things about him and started dating him and started meeting people around him and seeing how much they cared about him, and I knew it was a genuine thing, there was no turning back after that.
I think a true partner, and I try to do this with my wife, I try to amplify her voice, because her
Yes.
voice, in my opinion, my wife self-mutes her voice, and I've always tried to amplify her voice because I think it should be heard. I've been doing this show for 5 years. It took me 5 years to get her on because she was just recently in here.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'll always be her biggest champion, even though sometimes she doesn't think that I am.
Yeah.
She's got a little bit of that, because listen, she went through some really rough times with me. She saw the worst in me. But now I try to turn the volume up on her voice because I want her to be heard. I want her to be a strong person. I encourage her to be a strong woman. Just not strong enough to leave me one day. Not that strong, but strong.
Yeah, turn
You know
that
what I
down
mean.
just a little bit.
Yeah, it's like keep going, keep raising the volume. No, just a little bit down.
A little bit down.
A little bit down.
Yeah. I think he's probably in there laughing because he probably feels the same way. But no, he's the same. He wants me to be whoever I feel most comfortable being, and he's going to cheerlead me. And the one thing about him that has always been this way, he does not tell me what I want to hear. He tells me what I need to hear. But he says
Vastly different.
Yes. But he says it with such amount of kindness and patience and grace that no one has ever given me. Ever.
Do you listen to that though? That's the big thing. Because
I don't have to answer that. Sometimes.
But it sticks in your head, though.
Yeah.
Even if you don't agree with it or you don't acknowledge it, it does stick in your head. And
oh, yeah.
You hope over time it ruminates enough in there where you can say, hey, they're right. They're
Absolutely.
right. Don't ever tell him that.
No, I'm not telling him he's right about anything.
No,
I can't do it.
no.
That's that. Turn that back down.
That's the proverbial hand in a relationship, like George Costanza used to talk from Seinfeld.
Yeah.
A man without hand is not a man at all.
No, I can't let him have that. That's not going to happen. And also when he tells me things, it has to go through a series of weeds before it gets to my eardrums, because there's a lot of things that, well, is he saying that because he wants to keep me small? Is he saying that because
It's
X, Y, or
background
Z?
noise.
Yes. And it's childhood and first marriage and just, all my lenses come into play. So there are times where he says things to me and I just kind of have to be like, okay. And then I play it out in my head, and then eventually I'll go back and be like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and do what he told me to do because it was right.
In a lot of ways, you're fortunate because you both have had trauma, and you both know about each other's trauma. It's not like the trauma surfaced while you were together. My poor wife has had to deal with me as my trauma reared its head when the event happened and other stuff from my childhood. So she's had a tough go of it, and she still comes to terms with all that stuff. I try to give her as much room as I possibly can to process it. And, if something's coming down the pike, I say, hey, listen, this is coming up, let's prepare, brace yourself.
Yeah.
But she's at the point right now, she's like, it is what it is.
Here we go.
Here we go.
Yeah. And I mean, I think after, we were in family court for custody of his kids for about 6-7 years. And there were a lot of things that reared their head during that time frame. But there was nothing that reared its head during that time frame that he didn't tell me himself before it came. So I was always able, whereas in my past, in several different eras of my past, I was always blindsided by things. He doesn't allow me to get blindsided by anything. He tells me the truth, whether I want to hear it or whether I don't, whether it's ugly, nasty, messy, whatever. So I've never had to feel blindsided, and I've been able to take a step back and process and then show up for him. And he does the same thing for me. So it's that partner, it's that give and take that you need.
What led you into being a voice for divorce recovery?
His custody battle.
Really?
Yes. Because for me, I could see, because I went through a divorce, and I absolutely could have done everything that I watched him go through. It was easy to do. You find a shark enough attorney, they'll back you on every play. I could have done the exact same thing. But I saw I had a choice to make, and I put my child at the center of that choice. And I decided I'm not going to destroy this man. I'm not going to do X, Y, and Z. I'm not going to do these things. They're wrong. They take lack of integrity, lack of morals to do this. I'm not going to do it. And I think everyone has a choice. Everyone has a choice how they're going to handle their divorce, how they're going to handle their custody battle, how they're going to handle all of those things. And for me, watching people make the series of choices that were made that impacted not only someone that I love so very intensely, but also the children that come along with him, the family that comes along with him, because the ripple effect was so wide. Watching all of that, I said to myself, something's got to change.
I try to rationalize this stuff. I have some friends going through either have wicked ex-wives or going through wicked divorces. And I always try, my friends know this. I'll actually ask them, like, what's their deal? Like, what's their reality? Because everybody's reality is real to them. Your reality is not going to be the same as your ex-husband's reality. He's going to have a different point of view. Well, she did this, 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 and this.
Yeah.
I like your answer a little bit more when you say, hey, it wasn't all him, it was me. And that shows a little bit more mental maturity. But there's so for me, and this is maybe a bad part of me, is I believe that something worthwhile is worth fighting for. Mm-hmm. For me to sit here and tell you I got a perfect marriage with my wife could be a complete lie. I don't. But my wife is worth fighting for. My family is worth fighting for. And unless it hits one of those hard stops for me, I am a firm believer that I can overcome anything. I've overcome a lot of bad stuff. I can get through this.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be changed. There are certain things about me. Hey, listen.
What you see is what you get.
Yeah. There's oftentimes I just go like this to my wife and I say, hey, you hit the lottery. No. What lottery in hell did she win?
I'm sure she would agree.
Nah, well, some days. Depends on the day. But you became this voice for divorce recovery, and you're making traction, and I've watched some of your stuff on social media, and you speak with authority. I know you have imposter syndrome, we talked about in the beginning, but even stuff that you said in here, you spit daggers when you talk. I don't know if you realize you do that.
I've been told that before.
Okay, you do. You spit daggers of truth, which is kind of what everybody needs. Divorce is not a nice thing. Divorce is messy. Divorce is scary. It leaves you out in the middle of nowhere with no waypoints and no compass.
Yes.
So, what are some of the victories that you had speaking up on this?
Changing the narrative that comes along with divorce has been the biggest victory. Having clients come to me who, divorce is messy, but you can choose to make it messier or you can choose to make it cleaner. That the choice is yours. And having clients who come to me when they first come to me and they're like, my whole life is over. I want to destroy him. I want to take everything from her. They have these things because you said it earlier, the pound of flesh. The pound of flesh is actually emotional justice. That's what people are looking for. And it doesn't exist. Because if you Google it, and I have the definition in my book, but if you Google it, you can Google emotion and you can Google justice, and both have definitions. But when you put them together, that's when things go wonky. There's no one agreed upon definition because it doesn't exist. You're not going to find it.
You keep mentioning your book. You never mention the title.
Oh, that would be helpful, huh?
Yeah.
It's Uncaged, the Key to Happily Ever After.
Uncaged, the Key to Happily Ever After. And we're going to put a link to that in our show notes, because I think the things that you have to say and just the mental maturity that you approach this with. Just to make it clear, you're not an advocate for divorce. Like, so a married person doesn't come in there, you just first thing is like, you should get divorced.
Absolutely not. I have about 45% of my clients who come to me saying, we're getting a divorce, what do we do? Who have actually started to mend their marriage, because divorce is not actually what they wanted. They just wanted to be heard. So no, I am not a proponent or advocate of divorce.
You try to avoid divorce in all.
Yes. And if it's not avoidable, then I just try to avoid the mess that can come after it so that your kids don't have to get hurt. So people always ask, are you father's rights or mother's rights? And, if you get into that on social media, you got some folks that'll get real mad if you're on one side or the other. I'm neither. I'm a child advocate, because your children do not need to get wet because of your storm. They don't need to do that.
I like that.
I can't claim it. I found it on social media, but it hit me.
No,
something
you
terrible.
give them credit once. Whoever you heard it, you give them credit once, and then it belongs to you. That's the rule.
Okay, well, here's my credit once, and now it's mine.
Yeah, now it's yours. Now you can use it freely.
Yes.
Say, well, I always say,
Yes.
but that you know, children aren't supposed to get wet from the storm.
No, you're supposed to protect them. That's your job as a parent.
When somebody hires you as a coach,
Mhm.
what are they looking to get? Or what are you looking to provide?
Yes, because that is different. What they're looking to get originally is emotional justice. But what I am looking to provide is the steps for them to unpack their story, number one, because being heard, being able to spill your story out is very, very important when it comes to healing. And then we walk through the steps of grieving and forgiveness because you will never heal or grow if you don't grieve and forgive. And then I help them with nervous system triggers because you will be triggered by your ex no matter what. So we walk through some of those. And then I really just try to get them to a point where they become less reactive and more responsive to the things that are happening. So whether they have attorneys, whether it's high conflict, whether they're trying to do it kitchen table pro se style, whatever that looks like, become more responsive because the more reactionary you are, the more reactionary the other person is going to be.
Most emotions are met with the equal and opposite form of that emotion.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, I am a big person. Anger always meets anger. Just had it happen to me today.
Mhm.
Guy met me with anger. Well,
You're getting it back.
You're getting it back. But I also have the capacity to meet love with love.
Mhm.
You know, that's the key to somebody who meets anger with anger. They have
Yes.
the other way too.
Absolutely.
So what do you, first of all, why don't you tell our audience where we can find you?
Go to drcourtney.me. That's my website. I link it on there too. All of my coaching packages are on there. My bio, if you want to hear a little more about my story, all of that's on there.
I can't thank you enough for coming in here. And for the short time, our hour's almost up.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it went quick. It was great. Listen, like I said, the thing about you is you just spit these daggers of truth. Whether we need to hear them or whether we don't want to hear them, we should hear them. And meeting somebody like you, I think you have the capability, not only getting people through divorce and divorce recovery. I know what this is about, but I think you have the ability and the knowledge in order to stave off a lot of divorces. And that's what we want. Like, nobody wants to get divorced.
No, absolutely not. And if I have clients, I always ask them a series of questions when they first meet with me. And the answers to those questions are what lead me to take them back to say, are you sure this is really what you want? Because sometimes when we get mad, because not everybody has that emotional maturity, and when they get into a fight, they may have been raised like I was, and divorce is just a word you throw around, and that's not actually what they want. So sometimes it's just unpacking your story and gaining clarity on what it is you really want.
Just do what I do. It's like whenever I get into an argument, I just repeat the last couple of words that are said and trying to get to the root of the problem, which really is passive aggressive and pisses people off.
Kind of, because you like recapped like an entire story with like 3 words. You can't do that.
Well, so I do it with my kids. Okay, I will say this. I do it with my kids. My dad, I want this. You want this? Well, yeah. Tommy has it. Tommy has it. And then you get down to the thing. Well, it's really fun. Well, why didn't you just tell me it was really fun in the beginning? You know, that's how I get to the root of everything. I shouldn't do that with I do it with my wife sometimes, but I shouldn't. I know.
You just admitted that, and she's going to hear it.
Oh, yeah. She don't listen to my stuff, so it's fine. Don't worry about it.
I might tag her.
Although,
like at minute, whatever you need to listen to this.
Although I guarantee she's going to listen to this one.
She needs to.
So I can't thank you enough for coming in here. This has been a wonderful discussion. We left a lot on the table. I know we did. I know we left a lot on the table, and I'm actually coming down to Virginia not that long. I'm going to see my buddy Keith.
Yeah.
But I always end the show the same way, because you went through this divorce, this journey to find your voice, and you've somehow made it work. But if you go through suffering and you don't learn anything from that suffering, it is the biggest wasted opportunity of your life.
Absolutely.
So in your personal divorce recovery and your suffering that goes along with it, what do you think you learned?
I wrote it on my cup.
Oh, you got to show me. I never even looked.
I wrote it on my cup. My handwriting is terrible.
I'm not wearing my glasses. You think I'm actually going to be able to read that?
It is happily ever after isn't just a fairy tale. It's a choice.
Yeah, it gets in your mind, and it's a certain mindset. Happily ever after is not a reality. I still think happily ever after that's why they call it making love, right?
Yeah.
because you have to make love. It's
Absolutely.
work.
You have to choose it. That's why
Correct.
happily ever after is a choice. And my happily ever after is not going to look like yours. And my happily ever after does not include a glass slipper and a dress. My happily ever after is my family and building my business and living a life of peace and healing. That is my happily ever after. But you have to choose it. You have to put in work to choose it. It's not going to just happen to you like you're going to turn into some kind of pumpkin. It doesn't work that way.
As long as that glass slipper doesn't come through Amazon, I'm okay with that.
That Amazon delivery
Yeah,
guy.
Amazon delivery guy. That son of a bitch. He's in my house all the time. Doctor, I really appreciate you coming in here. I really
Thank you
do.
for
This has
having
been
me.
wonderful.
Yes.
And so whatever you're doing, wherever you're speaking, we're here for you to promote whatever you want to promote. Because once you're in here, you're part of our family, and we have this really weird family in here of people. Like it's a crazy thing. But I'm looking forward to seeing what you're going to do in the future.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a blast.
And that's going to do it for this episode of The Suffering Podcast, The Suffering of Divorce Recovery with Dr. Courtney Evans. And let's think about all the stuff that we learned. At times, we all feel like an imposter. Decondition yourself from past behaviors. We lose more than a partner in divorce. Emotional justice does not exist, but most importantly, I love this one, children shouldn't get wet from the storm. It's now mine. I gave you one.
Oh, come on.
It's now mine.
Wait, can we have takesy backsies?
And that's going to do it for this episode of the Suffering Podcast. Don't forget to go to popple.com to put in the code TSP20 for a 20% discount on your digital business card. Follow us on all social media. That's Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, OnlyFans. Follow me at Real Kevin Donaldson, and of course, follow the Suffering Podcast, and we're going to see you on the next episode.